Welcome to part 11, where we continue the strategic movement phase. Strategic movement phase, part 2. In part 2, we're going to cover just security operations. Throughout this video series, there's some nomenclature that the game uses. One is US unit. That is a US unit. ARVN unit, that's an ARVN unit. Free World Allies unit, that's a Free World Allies unit. Then there is pieces controlled by the US player. All three of these are controlled by the US player. Let's look at some of the numbers on these, just so you get an idea. So that ARVN unit there, that's an ARVN infantry regiment, and it has a combat strength of 5. It has an artillery strength of 4 and a movement of 7. The +1 is a pursuit allowance, which we'll be talking about at a later date. The other numbers are, divisional historical stuff like 1st Division, 3rd Regiment, etc. Looking at the US unit, we see it has a combat strength of 4, 0 artillery, movement of 10. The white box indicates that this unit may not be air mobilized or given amphibious transport in the form of a riverine. It has to move on its own. And the other unit, that is a Filipino unit, is one of the allies that the U.S. brought in. Combat strength of 2, artillery of 3, and a movement of 4 with a pursuit of -2. Now we're going to talk about security operations. So on a security operation, units have to start stacked together. So let's make believe we have one big stack here. Okay, so that's one big stack. Now, we could send them on a security operation with one exception. US units and ARVN units may not combine to be part of the same security operating stack. The Free World Ally can add to either one. So this could be a stack, moving stack. That could be a moving stack. And what's left, so let's say this was our security operation. The remaining unit would be left behind. One remaining requirement is that the operating unit, the one that's going to be moving in the security operation, has to start the phase on a road like such. So let's say we designate this unit, it's an armored infantry battalion, to be conducting a security operation. So the board looks like such. We activate the armored infantry battalion to do a security operation. So we start the operation by moving the unit. Now, just like strategic movement, the road movement is free, and you cannot move off the road, unlike strategic movement. So that's 0, that's 0. We pay 1 now because we're leaving the zone of control of this gentleman right here. And then we pay another movement point to go into the hex of the unknown Viet Cong unit. Collectively, the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese units are referred to as NLF player units. So that's just an FYI so that you understand the lingo, the difference between a Viet Cong unit and an NLF unit. Okay, so we go in there for 2 movement points. Now we've got 8 left of our 10. So we conduct an immediate combat. So the US player has a choice, not just the US player, sorry. The attacker has a choice to just not use all of his combat strength, his or her combat strength. If a woman ever plays this game, it should be his or her. Um, so they want to use they don't not required to use all of their combat strength. Now, why would you not want to use all your combat strength? Well, I'll let you see that for yourself later. We're going to use all of our combat strength for this. So we're going to come in with 4. Now the Viet Cong unit reveals himself. And I'm sure you can't see that, but he's a 207. So we're in the same hex, coming in with 4 and 2. All right, so just remember those values because we're going to be changing it. We're going to be just focusing on the combat table at this point. To keep our example simple, neither unit has any artillery capability. So in order to figure out how the combat, what column you're going to lose value at, we put a little marker here. And this is kind of how we do it, and I don't know if it's standard. So the Viet Cong unit has a strength of 2, so when we roll our die result, we're going to have a row representing the die roll number, and that's the column that it loses on. The bigger the column, the higher your losses. The US unit has a 4. So let's take a look at our potential results here. So there are die roll modifiers. We're in cultivated, so that doesn't change the die roll at all. But there is an odds modifier. So in this, if you're familiar with war games, and most of you are, you break down defense into a combat ratio. So there's 2 Viet Cong strength versus a US 4 combat strength. So the US has a 2-to-1 ratio. That is worth a +2 to the die roll. So we roll the die. The roll's a 3. So 3 and 2 is 5. So we just kind of look down and see where the 5 is, right? The number to the right of the slash is how much the defender loses. And the number to the left of the slash is how much the attacker loses. So in this particular case, the US loses 1 point. Now you'll be keeping track of replacement points on a track. So this here is the general record track. So let's say the US player has 12 US replacement points available. To take that loss, the US would drop his replacement points to 11, from 12 to 11. The other option is that the US player can pull the unit off the board as a casualty to cover the loss. Okay, at this point, the combat has been resolved. Excuse me while I do this. So now the Viet Cong unit has the option to retreat if he wishes. So let's say he does retreat. So he just leaves like normal. So let's say he wants to go this way. So he goes, it's 2 to leave the enemy hex, 3 for the cultivated, 4 to leave zone of control, 5 to cross the river, and 6 to go there. He still has 1 more. He has 7 movement points, so he's going to go here for 7. And now the US player can continue his security operation. So we're at 3 movement points. That's free. I'm sorry, we're at 2 movement points. So that's free, and that costs 3 to go in there. So he goes in there and he says, okay, well, let's look back at our combat table. So you can see that if the US was on a lower column, they would lose nothing. So there's benefits to coming in with lower numbers. So let's say the US player decides, all right, I'm not going to use the full 4. I'm going to use 3 at this point. So he's going to lose on 3. So now we got to see, well, what does the Viet Cong have in this situation here? So we reveal the VC unit. And we'll bring it up for you. Oops, little fumble fingers there. So 106. So we got a lucky break there. So we'll go back to our table. So the VC is losing on the first column, the US is losing on the first column, and the result is the result is modified by +3 because our ratio is now 3-1. And you'll see there's a table that goes through the modifiers. And the terrain is still irrelevant because we are on the we're in the cultivated, which is just there's a 0 terrain modifier. So we roll the die. We roll a 1, which is a low roll. 1 plus 3 is 4. So both sides are going to lose in column 1 on the 4, so each loses a point. So let's go back to our units here. So the US is going to take his unit. He's going to take 1 replacement point off the general record track, going down to 10 now. And the Viet Cong could do the same because they have a replacement point value as well. But the Viet Cong says, well, this unit's not really worth saving, so we are going to pull the unit off the map as a casualty to satisfy all losses. Now, this guy could continue on down the road looking for a nice place to fight. And let's say he does, and he has a wonderful day. So, and let's say he comes back here. He wants to engage this guy at a future time. That Viet Cong unit, I don't know if you remember, but we talked about reaction movement. That Viet Cong unit has the opportunity to do a reaction move. So he will. He's going to go 1 to leave zone of control, 3 for the marsh is a total of 4, and then 5, 6. Now we don't know what he is because he doesn't have to show us, but the NLF player will assure you that this unit has at least 6 movement points to make that a legal move. So one thing that I need to talk about now is the use of artillery. So let me set the board up again. Okay, so now we have an ARVN unit, that regiment that we looked at earlier. He has artillery value of 4, combat value of 5, and he's going to go on a security operation. And there's only 1 Viet Cong unit on the road that we're going to go after. So we designate this unit to be participating in the security operation. Now, this unit over here is called an independent artillery unit. There we go. Wait for it to focus. All right, 046, independent artillery unit. There we go. Now it focused. So that means it has a ground combat strength of 0 and has an artillery value of 4. So it's an independent artillery battalion. And there's different types of artillery out there. There's dedicated and independent. This particular one is an independent. And we'll get to what all that means at a later time. Artillery can be pretty complicated. So I'm going to give you a very simple example of how to use it. Okay, so in addition, we can add the independent artillery, any independent artillery on the board that we want to the security operation. So we're going to add that artillery unit, and he's going to fire in support of our attack. So security operation, that's free. He goes in here for 1. And we look at the VC unit. The VC unit is a 2. So now we're going to calculate the odds. That artillery unit is within range. He has a range of 1. Some of them have a range of up to 3 hexes. This one has a range of 1 hex. So we didn't completely declare our attack, but the ARVN unit is coming in with all of his firepower. He's coming in with 5. So he loses on the 5. And the Viet Cong unit has a defense strength of 2, so he loses on the 2. And now we figure in the artillery. So the ARVN unit has 4 points of artillery, and the US unit has 4 points of artillery. So that's 8 points of artillery. Unfortunately, we have restrictions. If you don't declare free fire, you take the artillery value, sum it, and then half it. So you cut it in half. So and you retain fractions. So the full artillery value that's coming in is 4 rather than 8. At the beginning of each operation, the U.S. has the opportunity to declare free fire on a province-by-province basis. And this is, not tied to the location of the operation. You just free fire wherever you want at the beginning of any operation, whether it's a NLF operation or a U.S. player operation. So there's 4 artillery coming in. So we take the value of the Viet Cong unit, which is 2, and we add that 4 artillery to it. So it's now losing on this column. So they're both losing on the same column because its value is 6 now. So you add your artillery to the enemy's loss value. So let's say we roll the die now. We're going to be coming in. The ARVN unit has 5 ground, 4 artillery, and another 4 for the U.S. Divided by 2 is 4. So it's got a total strength of 9 going against 2. So that is 4 to 1. So it's a plus 4 to the die roll. So let's say we roll the 4. 4 plus 4 is 8. So you look at the 8 column. And you look and you see you have a 0 and a 0. So this column can be pretty hit and miss. But if we had rolled a 5, 0, 0 means nobody loses anything. If you roll a 5, the Viet Cong lose a 1 unit, a 1 step. So they can take it as a replacement loss, or they can pull the battalion off the map to satisfy the losses. So it's the so that's what the artillery does for you, and it's a very useful tool to keep in mind, is that the artillery increases the enemy's loss value and also adds to your value for odds. So at this point, the Viet Cong unit could retreat, and that would be a very reasonable thing to do. But let's say that it didn't, and we decided we didn't want to continue the fight. We have a one-time option to withdraw back to the hex we came from. I did that off camera by accident. So we have a one-time option to withdraw to the hex we came from. And just as a footnote, these units go back to being hidden. The Viet Cong has to momentarily reveal the value, and good table etiquette says you just leave it revealed until the combat's done. So that is the down and dirty, quick approach to security operations and the very basics of combat. Next episode, we will be going into continuous operations, which is what you're going to be spending most of your time doing in this game. Okay, take care, bye-bye.